Hello Toastmasters and welcome guests. This is not an exciting speech. This is a speech about friendship and about beaches. The friendship is between Ellery and me and many of you and Don Mitchell, who is our former president. And it is all about how when you bring the beach and people together, you have time to relax and enjoy it. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to show you lots of pictures of beaches, and I'm going to step over the podium so that I can remember some facts about the islands, which are the Virgin Islands, and share them with you accurately. The Virgin Islands are in the Caribbean. There are actually three groups of islands, but originally, for many, many years, they were inhabited by Indians who were wiped out through colonialism, like many Indians around the Americas. The islands include, are actually situated right here at the tip of Puerto Rico, and actually the Spanish Virgin Islands are part of Puerto Rico. I never even realized that they existed. They really operate as part of Puerto Rico. And then there is the British Virgin Islands and the US Virgin Islands, and I'm going to tell you a bit about them. The British Virgin Islands, and by the way, officially they are the Virgin Islands, and they are called the BVIs, or the British Virgin Islands, by most of us, but the British, because they owned all of them for many, many years, took that name, and they are the British Virgin Islands. They are the Virgin Islands, period. There are three major islands in the BVIs. First is Tortola, which is very large. It's an anchorage island. It's where people go to sail away. I did it myself many years ago for a wonderful week sailing through the islands. The second one is Virgin Gorda, which is a long island with many, many dimensions to it. And you notice all these other little bitty ones. You can sail all day and never be out of the sight of land. That's what's really cool about it. Until you want to go up to Anegada, which is a very interesting coral island. It has a small airstrip on it left over from one of the wars, and a few people, great snorkeling, and great food. The US Virgin Islands are dominated by St. Thomas, and that is where we stay. That is where Don works for Cancer Centers of America, and he invited us down to stay. We stayed in a lovely condo right there in the same area that he was, so he was right around the corner, and he spent part of every single day with us and sometimes the whole day with us while we were there. St. Thomas is the Wall Street or the New York City of the islands. That's where all the business takes place. And it's an old city. It was originally Danish. In fact, the US Virgin Islands were the Danish, forgotten, I'll come back, they were originally owned by the Danes and were sold to the United States in 1916 for $25 million in gold. It was primarily because the islands were needed strategically by the U.S. for the war, for the First World War. The second biggest island is St. John, and St. John is very beautiful. It is not a city where people work. It's a city where people live beautifully on the beach and go to visit. And we spent a whole day there. Don had not yet been to St. John for a whole day, and so we did that together. And finally, there's St. Croix is the third biggest island, and it is flat. Unlike the other islands, which are volcanic islands, St. Croix can actually sustain itself by what it grows. All these other islands, they have to fly them all in. And one of the most interesting things that we learned as we were there about the quintessence of the Virgin Islands is that A, the beaches are beautiful, and B, the food is not terribly expensive, but it's not cheap, but the rum drinks are. And you spend a lot of time adding to your calm through rum drinks. I rarely have a drink in the middle of the day, except when we were in the islands. The third part of the islands is that it is laid back. People are comfortable with themselves. It is a melting pot of people from all over the world. And many of these people's heritage are left over from those Indians that were wiped out, as well as the African Americans that came there to work in these sugar plantations, which was brutal, and we did see the remains of one of them. So let's go to our first beach, and well, first we'll see where we stayed, and we'll also go to our first beach, which was Linquist. This was the view from our condo. We were looking out on the valley, which is now a golf course, and if you look to the right from our window, you could see Linquist Beach. Now, that's as the crow flies. It wasn't quite so easy to get there. There are lots of switchbacks, and you drive on the left-hand side of the road, The good thing is all the cars are US cars, so you're not sitting on the opposite side. You do have to get used to turning left and right in the right lane though, and so we all protected each other on that, doing that, although I did most of the driving when Don wasn't driving. This was a critter that came to meet us the first day after we went out to breakfast. He was a huge iguana waiting at our front door. We showed him away, hoping he would leave. He couldn't seem to figure out how to get out of there, but when we came back later in the afternoon, he was gone. A big one. This is the view from Don's condo. He looks out on the ocean. It's absolutely extraordinary, and he loves the setup that he has there. These condos are great. There's a bedroom, a living room, and a kitchen. You have all the supplies that you need. We never turned on the TV once, even though we had one. We did turn on the air conditioning, though, I will tell you that. This is Linguist Beach. It was definitely an overcast day, but it didn't seem to matter. We were in the water immediately. And what we learned here was that you could lay on your flat on your back, chat with the next person, and no effort whatsoever. Ellery and I even figured out how to link our arm and leg so that we were facing each other while we were floating on our backs. But the salt is so heavy. But the interesting thing is that the beaches are white baby powder. I never felt like I had sand in my britches. It was wonderful. It didn't matter how much we were out in the water or on the beach. This was a boat. You see many big, big boats. And you'll notice here, which was amazing, this is a super side off the side of this boat. And you see these? Wow. This is a armada. What are those jet skis?
Oh, yeah.
An armada. These guys could have taken the island if they wanted to. It was amazing. This is somebody who has money to spare, I can assure you. This is us on the beach. We did a lot of this. You know, we'd swim for a little while and we'd sit for a while, and we'd swim for a little while and we'd sit for a little while. We'd doze for a little while. We'd even talk every now and then. And we would pull out our handhelds and check out what you guys were doing back here in the States. But this is the way you spend most of your time on the beach. We also learned that people there love to eat. This is one of our early lunches. And Ellery was having this rum punch. It was wonderful. I did mention rum punch, right? Don pointed out that rum punch is usually $2 to $3 a glass. If you want to get a bar drink or a glass of wine for $15, have at it. But we go for the rum punch. And this was the evening, well, the second evening we were there, and you'll notice that we all have our drinks, of course. And these people back here, they work with Don. They came over, said hello, and we got to meet them. Everybody knows everybody in the islands. So, we decided we would do a beach a day. We had 5 full days there. We did go to 4 beaches, and our second beach was Megan's Bay. By the way, Linguist Beach is a 5-star beach. It's considered one of the finest beaches in the world. Megan's Bay Beach was amazing. The whole time we were there, we saw maybe 10 people.
Wow.
Wow.
It was totally secluded. Right over here, we had a lifeguard, and that was it. There were no bars. There were no rum drinks. It was just us and the beach. It was amazing. There's Ellery. Ellery was going in, said hello. Don didn't get to make it with us. He had to work that day. Poor Don. And this was amazing. We saw a horse go by on the beach. Wow. And then he came back in the water. And I couldn't figure out how to download the tape so you could see him coming out of the water, but it was absolutely magnificent. This is a racehorse, and they actually put them through their paces in the water to strengthen them. So we wanted to get to know a little bit more of St. Thomas before we headed for Water Island, so a couple of quick ones here. I'm going to run over in time, but you guys know me, I usually do that. We went to, this is the island's version of Starbucks, and so that's where you can get your start in the morning if you need caffeine. This was for the Slider Showdown. Now, the Slider Showdown is once a year. All of the restaurants come and they make sliders from seafood, from pork, from beef, every kind of that you can imagine. There were exotic ones and there were plain ordinary ones. Everybody eats them and then votes on what's the best. It was also 95 degrees and about 85% humidity. So we ate our sliders and we headed to the beach. This beach is it's a step up. It's got its own bar. You can get some drinks. They had some entertainment, and sleazy entertainment is normal to the islands. Everybody's got a bar singer. These guys were drinking out in the floating bar. while we were preparing to go to the regular bar. So you'll notice that we had the same outfits every day, because this is what you do at the beach, and they're all different pictures, but it's the same outfits. And Don's wearing a bit of his rum drink right there on his shirt. Oh, Don! At the end of the day, this is what we watched before we headed back, and it was incredible. One other thing I want to say to you about this particular beach is that its distinction, is that it was an anchorage for way, way back in the early days of the explorers because it had freshwater ponds. And that's mainly what they came from. It's called Water Beach. And when the U.S. bought the islands from the Danish, they didn't get to buy Water Island because Water Island was owned by the East Asiatic Company. And it wasn't purchased until 1944, and it wasn't until 1996 that it was actually added as a U.S., it was just owned by the U.S. separately, and it was added as the fourth island. It's a quick ferry ride, which was lots of fun. So now it's time to see beaches, beaches, and beaches. I'm going to run through these so that you guys don't throw me off stage, give me the hook. As we drove we took the ferry over, it was a wonderful ferry ride, a long one. We had our car, and as we drove, we saw beaches and ruins. This is the ruins of a windmill that was used to process sugar cane. And this was up at the top of a mountain that had been kind of cut off, and obviously there had been a facility up there before. Everywhere you look, this was one, I think this was called Filler Crab Beach, but everywhere you looked, there was another beach. And as you notice, they're all mountainous. This is all volcanic islands. This is actually Annenberg Plantation, which was a sugar processing facility. And on the left, you see, this is the remains of the windmill. What I didn't realize is that the windmill, I always thought they were stationary, the turn, but they actually can pivot like a sail in a sailboat to pick up the wind. But when the wind wasn't blowing, they brought up horses and mules to turn the crank, and that would force all of the sugar out of the out of the sugar cane. And then over here, Ellery's standing by the building where they were processed, where they used steam, which is hard to imagine what it must have been like with 95-degree heat, 85% humidity, and then you're going to apply steam to sugar. So this was tough, brutal work. And that was after it had been harvested, by the way. I've always wanted skinny legs, and I didn't get them down there, but we went to lunch at Skinny Legs. Now, one of the standards in the islands is chickens. You see chickens everywhere. You'll see whole chicken families. You hear the roosters in the morning. There are just chickens everywhere. Well, there was a whole group of chickens at Skinny Legs, and one of them decided to jump up on Ellery's shoulder and get us potato chips. Potato chips went everywhere. The proprietors were shooing all the birds away, and it was great fun. That was while we were drinking rum drinks, by the way. This is Cinnamon Beach, where we decided to stake our territory for the day, and this is a panorama of that particular beach at the end of the day when everybody had left, because some of this beach actually attracts some of the people from the cruise ships. And Don said, you can recognize them, they all have the same towel, and they'll all leave at 4 o'clock when the whistle blows. This was on our ride back, this amazing weather all around us. We were never rained on once, but clearly somebody was getting rain somewhere. Beaches and friends are a perfect combination. I really think that I should call this speech Dogwood Toastmasters, Friends and Beaches, because we would not know Don without Dogwood Toastmasters. This is from Don's birthday party. We celebrated his 50th with him. He had 25 people from his office who came. We met them all. We're here on the beach having a wonderful time, and you guys all participated too. And when Don says, come see me, he means it. Call him.